7 minutes, Vincent Moretti said, staring at the frozen security footage. That is all it took for someone to make the one person I trusted disappear. At 7:12 on a cold Monday evening, Emily Carter left the 42nd floor of Moretti Tower carrying her leatherwork bag, a paper cup of coffee, and a folder Vincent needed before midnight. At 7:19, her bag was found beside her car in the underground parking garage. Emily was gone. The cameras showed her entering the elevator. They showed the doors opening downstairs. Then, for exactly 7 minutes, every camera between the elevator lobby and the parking level displayed the same empty hallway. No alarms. No witnesses. No explanation. By 7:30, Vincent stood behind Emily's desk while 20 security employees searched the building. He did not raise his voice. Men feared Vincent most when he became quiet. Emily's computer was still running. Her reading glasses rested beside a legal pad. A half-finished cup of tea had gone cold beneath the desk lamp. Everything looked ordinary except for the chair. Empty. For 6 years, Emily had arrived before him every morning. She knew his schedule better than he did. She remembered which meetings he hated, which calls he avoided, and which promises he had made when everyone else forgot. Vincent had once told a business associate that any employee could be replaced. Now he could not look away from her empty chair. Sir, Daniel Brooks, his head of security, entered the office carrying a small evidence bag. Inside was Emily's silver wristwatch. We found this on your desk. Vincent turned slowly. My desk. Daniel nodded. Someone placed it there after you left for your afternoon meeting. Vincent took the watch from the bag. The hands had stopped at 7:19. Beneath it was a white card containing 8 words. At midnight, you lose more than your secretary. The room went silent. Vincent read the message again. His first instinct was to lock every door, question every employee, and tear apart every system connected to his organization. Control had protected him for most of his adult life. But Emily had disappeared from inside the most secure building he owned. Someone knew his cameras, his schedules, his blind spots. Someone had walked through his world without being noticed. Close every financial channel that can be closed without alerting the public, Vincent said. Cancel tonight's negotiations. Freeze every discretionary transfer. Nobody leaves this building until we understand what happened. Daniel studied him. That could cost you millions. Vincent placed Emily's watch beside the empty chair. Then I will lose millions. His phone rang. Unknown number. Every person in the office stopped moving. Vincent answered. For several seconds, there was only silence. Then Emily's voice came through the speaker, calm but strained. Vincent, listen carefully. Do not trust the first person who tells you they know where I am. The call ended. Vincent remained motionless. Daniel stepped closer. Was that Emily? Vincent looked toward the dark windows overlooking Chicago. 42 floors below, the city continued moving as if nothing had changed. Traffic lights shifted. Trains crossed the river. Thousands of office windows burned against the night. But inside Moretti Tower, the most powerful man in Chicago finally understood that someone had not taken his secretary to frighten him. They had taken the one person who knew how his entire world worked. And somewhere inside that world, someone was waiting for Vincent Moretti to make the wrong choice. 6 years earlier, Emily Carter had entered Moretti Tower carrying a second-hand briefcase and wearing the only Navy suit she owned. She was 23, newly hired, and determined not to look impressed by the marble lobby, the private elevators, or the men who lowered their voices whenever Vincent Moretti walked past. Her first morning began at 6:30 because Emily believed being early was the simplest form of respect. Vincent arrived at 7:10, glanced at the coffee waiting beside his schedule, and asked, "Where is Margaret?" Emily stood. "She retired Friday, sir. I am Emily Carter, your new secretary." Vincent looked at her for 3 seconds. "How long do you expect to last?" "Long enough to learn what everyone else keeps getting wrong." That answer should have ended her employment. Instead, Vincent walked into his office and left the door open. Emily learned quickly. She discovered that Vincent hated meetings without written agendas, never ate breakfast before major negotiations, and became quieter when something worried him. She learned which employees were afraid to ask for time off, which clients exaggerated their importance, and which problems could be solved before they ever reached his desk. Within 6 months, Vincent stopped checking his calendar. Within a year, he stopped asking whether confidential documents had been secured. If Emily said something was handled, it was handled. Yet the people around Vincent rarely noticed her. Executives handed her coats without looking at her face. Wealthy visitors spoke through her as if she were furniture. Some called her sweetheart. Others asked whether she planned to find a real career. Emily answered every insult with the same calm professionalism. She did not stay because she lacked ambition. She stayed because her younger sister was finishing nursing school, because her father had lost most of his retirement savings after a medical emergency, and because stability mattered more than pride when people depended on you. Vincent knew none of that. He knew Emily preferred tea to coffee. He knew she used blue ink for personal reminders and black ink for business. He knew she never missed work. He never asked why. 3 years into her employment, Vincent suffered a severe migraine during an important week of negotiations. He refused to cancel anything. Emily moved every unnecessary meeting, dimmed the lights in his office, placed medication and water beside his chair, and told visitors that Mr. Moretti was unavailable. When Vincent recovered, he asked who authorized the schedule changes. "I did," Emily said. "You could have cost me an important agreement. You could not negotiate clearly if you could barely read the documents." Vincent stared at her. "You are unusually comfortable disagreeing with me." Emily gathered the files from his desk. "Someone should be." He almost smiled. Almost. By the 6th year, Emily had become the quiet center of Moretti Tower. She knew which calls Vincent answered personally, which charities he supported anonymously, and which employees received help without ever learning where it came from. She remembered the anniversary of his mother's death because he never did until the day arrived. She kept the office running through financial crises, family emergencies, and betrayals that made Vincent trust fewer people each year. And still, he called her his secretary as if the title explained everything. 1 week before she disappeared, Emily stayed late to review Vincent's private schedule against a series of unexplained business decisions. At 11:47, she noticed something impossible. Someone had accessed meetings that existed only on her calendar and Vincent's. Emily stared at the screen as the building grew silent around her. Then she opened a new file, copied the records, and whispered the question Vincent should have asked 6 years earlier. "Who has been watching me?" For the next 6 days, Emily told no one what she had found. She arrived at Moretti Tower at 6:30 each morning, prepared Vincent's schedule, answered calls, and moved through the office with the same calm expression she had worn for years. But after everyone left, she stayed behind. The access records showed a pattern. Meetings were being viewed hours before Vincent made important decisions. Private travel plans were opened before reservations changed. Confidential appointments were copied, then erased from the system history. Whoever was watching them had not broken into Moretti Tower. They already belonged there. Emily created a separate file and began recording every unusual access. She trusted Vincent, but she knew his greatest weakness. If she brought him suspicion without proof, he would lock down the building, question everyone, and force the person responsible to disappear before she learned the truth. So Emily waited. On Thursday afternoon, she changed one detail in Vincent's private calendar. She created a false meeting for Friday night at a restaurant near the Chicago River. Only 3 people had permission to view the schedule: Emily, Vincent, and Richard Hale, Vincent's senior advisor of 11 years. By Friday morning, the restaurant received a request to reserve its private dining room under a company connected to one of Vincent's competitors. Emily stared at the confirmation email until the letters blurred. Richard, the man who had attended Vincent's family dinners. The man who had stood beside him through business disputes and funerals. The man Vincent called when trust mattered. Emily copied the evidence onto an encrypted drive. She considered walking into Vincent's office immediately. Then Richard appeared beside her desk. "Working late again?" he asked. Emily closed the file. "Someone has to keep this place organized." Richard smiled. "Vincent would be helpless without you." He would disagree. Vincent disagrees with anything that makes him feel dependent. Richard walked away. Emily watched him enter the private elevator. For the first time in 6 years, she felt unsafe inside the building she knew better than her own apartment. That night, Emily called Daniel Brooks. She did not explain everything. She asked him one question. "If I needed to send you information without Vincent knowing, could you protect it?" Daniel became silent. "Why would Vincent need not to know?" "Because I do not know who is watching his reactions." Daniel told her where to send the file. Emily transferred only part of the evidence. She kept the rest with her. Monday evening arrived cold and gray. At 7:12, Emily left the 42nd floor carrying the final records in her work bag. She had planned to meet Daniel at a secure location 10 miles away. Inside the elevator, her phone displayed a message from an unknown number. Your father's medication delivery was canceled today. Emily froze. Another message appeared. We know where your family lives. She understood immediately. This was no longer about stolen schedules. Someone had been watching her too. When the elevator doors opened, Emily stepped into the quiet lobby and made a decision. She opened Vincent's private emergency contact system and sent Daniel a single file disguised as an expense report. Then she deleted the message history and continued toward the parking garage. At 7:19, the lights near her car went dark. Emily stopped walking. A familiar voice came from behind her. You should have stayed invisible. Emily turned slowly. Richard Hale stood several feet away, dressed in the same gray overcoat he had worn to Vincent's office that morning. Emily looked at him, then at the security camera above the elevator doors. The red light was off. Richard smiled. Vincent thinks power means knowing everything. Tonight, we are going to teach him what it feels like to know nothing. Emily tightened her grip on her work bag. She was afraid, but fear did not erase 6 years of watching, remembering, and preparing for problems before anyone else noticed them. She looked directly at Richard and understood that her only advantage was the one thing he had never respected. He still believed she was just a secretary. At 7:42 that evening, Vincent stood inside Emily's office while Daniel Brooks searched the file she had sent before disappearing. The document looked ordinary. Hotel receipts, transportation costs, office supplies, and routine expenses filled the screen. Daniel checked the metadata twice. There is nothing here. Vincent looked at the clock. 4 hours and 18 minutes remained until midnight. Emily does not send useless information. Daniel opened the file again. Vincent walked toward the windows. Below them, Chicago traffic moved through the cold night, indifferent to the empty chair behind him. He had already canceled negotiations worth millions. Financial transfers had been frozen. Every employee with access to the private floors was being questioned. None of it had brought Emily back. For most of his life, Vincent had believed every problem had a price, a weakness, or a person who could be pressured into solving it. Tonight, his money purchased information that led nowhere. His authority produced frightened employees and conflicting answers. His influence opened doors, but Emily was behind none of them. Sir, Daniel said, there is something hidden in the expense totals. Vincent turned. Daniel arranged the numbers by date. The final digits formed a sequence that matched private meeting codes used inside Moretti Tower. One name appeared repeatedly. Richard Hale. Vincent's expression became unreadable. That is impossible. Emily did not think so. Vincent stared at the screen. Richard had advised him for 11 years. He had attended family dinners, managed sensitive negotiations, and stood beside Vincent when others walked away. Find Richard. Daniel remained still. There is more. Attached to the file was an unsent voice recording. Emily's voice filled the quiet office. If you are hearing this, I ran out of time. Vincent will want to act immediately. Do not let him. Trust Daniel. Richard knows how Vincent reacts when someone takes something from him. That is what he is counting on. The recording ended. Vincent said nothing. Daniel closed the laptop. She knew. She suspected. She knew enough to warn us. Vincent looked at Emily's desk. 6 years of schedules, conversations, and quiet corrections surrounded him. He remembered the meetings she had prevented him from attending when his judgment was clouded by anger. The employees she had defended without asking for credit. The problems she had solved before he knew they existed. Vincent had trusted her competence every day while knowing almost nothing about the woman herself. Search her desk, he said. Daniel hesitated. Emily left instructions to trust me. I heard her. Then listen. The words landed harder than Daniel intended. Vincent turned slowly. Nobody spoke to him that way. But the clock kept moving. 4 hours remained. Vincent opened the top drawer himself. Inside were pens, appointment cards, and a small notebook. He reached for it, then stopped. On the cover, Emily had written one sentence. If I disappear, the first person Vincent suspects will be the wrong one. Vincent's hand remained above the notebook. Who did she mean? Daniel asked. Vincent already knew. Himself. His instincts. His need to control every outcome. His certainty that distrust had kept him alive. The office phone rang. Daniel answered and listened. We found Richard's car near an industrial property 12 miles south of downtown. Vincent reached for his coat. Prepare the vehicles. Daniel blocked the doorway. No, the room went silent. Move. Richard wants you angry. Emily warned us. Vincent's eyes hardened. Every minute we wait is another minute she is missing. And if you walk into the place Richard wants you to find, we may lose the only advantage Emily gave us. Vincent looked at the clock. 3 hours and 53 minutes remained. For the first time that night, the most powerful man in Chicago faced a problem he could not solve by giving an order. To find Emily, he would have to do the one thing he had spent his entire life refusing to do. He would have to trust someone else. Emily had been inside the isolated office building for nearly 2 hours when Richard finally stopped pretending this was only about information. He sat across from her at a long conference table, his gray overcoat folded over the back of a chair, while rain tapped softly against the dark windows. 2 men remained outside the room, but neither had spoken to Emily. Richard needed her cooperation, not fear. That gave her time. Give me the access sequence to Vincent's private accounts, Richard said. Emily looked at the laptop between them. You already know I cannot access those accounts alone. You approve his verification requests. I schedule his meetings too. That does not mean I own the building. Richard smiled. 6 years beside Vincent, and you still protect him. Emily lowered her eyes, allowing him to mistake thoughtfulness for surrender. I am protecting my family. Then cooperate. Emily breathed slowly. She had spent years watching powerful men reveal themselves when they believed they had won. They talked too much. They underestimated quiet people. Richard was no different. If I give you the wrong sequence, the system locks for 24 hours, she said. Then give me the correct one. Emily entered a series of numbers. Every digit was valid except one. A 7 where Vincent would expect a 1. Years earlier, Vincent had changed that number after Emily noticed a security weakness. Only the two of them knew why. If the sequence reached Moretti Tower, Vincent would recognize it as a message. Richard studied the screen. Was that difficult? You threaten my family. I reminded. You what matters. Emily looked at him. That is the difference between you and Vincent. Richard laughed softly. You think Vincent cares about people? I think he has spent his life pretending he does not. The smile left Richard's face. At Moretti Tower, Daniel placed the transmitted sequence on the screen. Vincent saw the incorrect digit immediately. She changed the 7. Daniel frowned. What does that mean? 3 years ago, Emily found a flaw in our verification system. She told me 7 was too predictable, so we changed it to 1. Vincent looked closer at the transmission time. She wants me to know she entered this herself. Daniel nodded. Then she is alive, alert, and leaving us information. Vincent reached for his coat. We know the transmission source. We know where it came from 20 minutes ago. Vincent stopped. Daniel continued. Richard may expect us to trace it. Emily expects me to recognize the signal. And she told you to trust me. Vincent looked at him. The old instinct returned. Move first. Control the situation. Give no one time to disagree. Prepare a small team, Vincent said. Daniel shook his head. We wait until the location is confirmed. I am done waiting. That is exactly what Richard wants. Vincent stepped closer. Emily is sitting somewhere because I failed to see what was happening inside my own organization. Then do not fail her again because you cannot tolerate uncertainty. The room went silent. Vincent turned toward the windows. Midnight was less than 3 hours away. He knew Daniel was right. He also knew knowing something had never guaranteed that he would obey it. 20 minutes later, Vincent left Moretti Tower without telling Daniel. He took one driver and followed the location attached to Emily's signal. The industrial property stood empty when he arrived. Lights burned inside, but the rooms contained nothing except a laptop displaying a live message. Too late. Vincent stared at the words. His phone rang. Daniel. The real transmission source just moved, Daniel said. Richard wanted you away from the tower. Vincent closed his eyes. In that moment, the truth became impossible to avoid. Emily had trusted Daniel. Daniel had warned him. And Vincent had chosen control anyway. His decision had cost them time. Where is she now? Vincent asked. We do not know. The silence that followed felt heavier than anger. Vincent looked at the empty building and finally understood the lesson Emily had been trying to teach him before she disappeared. Power was not the ability to act whenever you wanted. Sometimes power was having the humility to admit that someone else knew better. Vincent returned to the car. Daniel. Yes. Vincent spoke words no one who worked for him had ever heard. Tell me what to do. Vincent returned to Moretti Tower at 10:14 and did something his entire organization had learned never to expect. He entered the security room, stood beside Daniel Brooks, and waited for instructions. Daniel had divided the problem into 3 parts. Find where Richard had moved Emily. Protect her family without alerting anyone watching them. Remove every financial and business advantage Richard expected to use before midnight. We do this my way, Daniel said. Vincent looked at the screens. Your way? Daniel studied him for a moment, then began. The first move was quiet. Vincent authorized emergency protection for Emily's father and younger sister through trusted local authorities without contacting them directly. The second move was financial. Every company Richard controlled through hidden partners lost access to Moretti contracts within 30 minutes. Banks received documented fraud concerns. Attorneys prepared evidence for investigators. Business partners were informed that Richard Hale had compromised confidential information and used private records for personal gain. One by one, the doors Richard believed money had purchased began closing. At 10:47, Daniel traced a delivery order connected to the building where Emily had been held. The order had been redirected to a warehouse near the Calumet River. Could be another false location, Vincent said. Daniel nodded. So we verified before moving. Vincent said nothing. Waiting still felt like surrender, but this time he remained beside Daniel. At the warehouse, Emily noticed the change before. Richard did. His phone began ringing every few minutes. First, a bank representative, then an attorney, then a business partner who refused to continue speaking with him. Richard walked toward the windows, his calm expression slowly disappearing. What did you send, Vincent? He asked. Emily remained seated. One wrong number. Richard stared at her. That cannot destroy 11 years of work. No, but it can tell Vincent where to start looking. Richard checked his phone again. Emily watched him and understood something important. Vincent was not responding the way Richard expected. There were no public threats, no reckless announcements, no visible attempt to protect his reputation. Instead, Richard's network was being removed piece by piece. At 11:12, Daniel received confirmation from authorities that the warehouse location was active. Vincent reached for his coat. Daniel stopped him. You stay here. Vincent's expression hardened. No, you asked me what to do. The room became silent. If you appear there, Richard may change his behavior. Emily needs a controlled recovery, not your need to be the first person through the door. Vincent looked at Emily's empty chair through the glass wall. Every instinct told him to go. But for the first time, he recognized the difference between protecting someone and making himself the center of their rescue. He removed his hand from the coat. Bring her home safely. Daniel nodded. At 11:31, Richard received one final call. His attorney had withdrawn. His accounts were under review. Investigators had received Emily's records. The people he expected to protect him were cooperating with authorities. Richard looked across the conference table. He destroyed everything. Emily shook her head. You built everything on people who stayed because they were afraid to leave. Minutes later, lights appeared outside the warehouse windows. Emily closed her eyes. She had spent 6 years watching Vincent use power to make people obey. Tonight, for the first time, he had used that power to expose the truth and then stepped aside so others could do their jobs. At 11:48, Daniel called Moretti Tower. Vincent answered before the first ring finished. We have Emily. She is safe. Vincent sat down slowly. Around him, dozens of screens continued glowing. Contracts had been lost. Partnerships had ended. Millions of dollars had disappeared from projected deals. Vincent looked at Emily's silver watch beside the empty chair. Midnight had not arrived. Richard had promised that Vincent would lose more than his secretary. He had been right. Vincent had lost the illusion that control was the same thing as strength. And for the first time in his life, Vincent Moretti understood that it was a loss worth accepting. Emily returned to Moretti Tower shortly after 1 in the morning. Daniel walked beside her through the marble lobby, but she needed no assistance. She was exhausted, her coat was missing, and her face carried the weight of the longest night of her life. Yet her steps remained steady. The private elevator opened on the 42nd floor. Vincent was waiting alone. For 6 years, Emily had seen him command crowded rooms without raising his voice. She had watched executives become nervous when he entered, and powerful men change their decisions after a single conversation. Now he stood motionless beside her empty desk, holding the silver watch that had stopped at 7:19. Emily stepped from the elevator. Vincent looked at her as if every prepared sentence had disappeared. "You came," Emily said. His eyes remained on her face. "You should never have doubted that." Emily walked toward her desk and took the watch from his hand. "I did not doubt that you would look for me." Vincent became still. "Then what did you doubt?" "Whether you understood why I stayed." The question settled between them. Daniel quietly left the floor. Vincent looked around the office Emily had kept running for 6 years. "You stayed because people depended on you. That was part of it. Because you believed in the work." "Sometimes." Vincent waited. Emily placed the watch beside her cold cup of tea. "I stayed because every year I thought things would change. I thought eventually you would see the people around you before something forced you to lose them." Vincent lowered his eyes. Emily continued, "You trusted me with your schedule, your accounts, your family emergencies, and decisions worth millions. But you never asked what I wanted from my own life." "I should have." "Yes." No anger sharpened her voice. That made the words harder to ignore. Vincent stepped closer but stopped several feet away. "Richard is finished. The evidence is with investigators. His accounts are under review. Every company connected to him has been removed from our network." Emily looked at him. "And you think that fixes this?" "No," Vincent answered without hesitation. Emily studied his face. Hours earlier, he would have defended every decision. Now he simply stood there and accepted the truth. "I am increasing your security," he said. "A driver will take you everywhere. Your family will have protection. You will move into a secure residence until this is over." Emily closed her eyes. "There it is." "What?" "The same mistake." Vincent's expression tightened. "I am trying to keep you safe. You are trying to make every decision because fear makes you feel entitled to control my life. You were taken because of me, and that does not make me yours to manage." The office went silent. Vincent looked toward the windows. Dawn was still hours away, but the city lights had begun fading behind clouds. "What do you want me to do?" he asked. Emily looked at him for a long moment. "Ask." Vincent turned back. "What do you need?" It was a simple question. For Vincent Moretti, it required more humility than any apology. Emily sat in her chair. "Tonight, I need to go home. Tomorrow, I need to see my family. After that, I need time." Vincent nodded slowly. "You have it." Emily looked down at her hands. "There is something else." Vincent waited. "I was going to resign." He froze. "Before tonight. 2 weeks ago, I wrote the letter." Vincent stared at the empty space beside her computer as if the room had changed shape. "Why?" Emily met his eyes. "Because 6 years of being necessary to your life left me with almost no life of my own." Vincent had spent the entire night believing that bringing Emily back would restore what had been taken from him. Only now did he understand that. Finding her was not the same as keeping her. Emily was safe. Richard had lost his power. The crisis was over. But the most difficult choice still remained, because Vincent Moretti could command an empire, close accounts, and partnerships, and make powerful people listen. He could do almost anything except force Emily Carter to stay without proving that he had learned nothing at all. For the next 3 days, Emily did exactly what she had asked to do. She went home. She sat with her father at the small kitchen table where he had helped her complete college applications years earlier. She drove her younger sister to work and listened to ordinary complaints about hospital schedules, parking fees, and broken vending machines. She turned off her work phone. For the first time in 6 years, Moretti Tower continued without her. Vincent noticed every absence. Meetings started late because nobody knew which clients required extra preparation. 2 executives arrived expecting appointments that had been moved weeks earlier. Vincent reached for his phone 3 times before remembering he had promised not to call. On the 4th morning, Emily returned carrying a sealed envelope. Vincent stood when she entered his office. "Is that your resignation?" "Yes." He looked at the envelope but did not reach for it. "I can change your position." Emily shook her head. "This is not about a title. You can choose your hours, your salary, your responsibilities. You are still trying to solve my decision by making it easier to stay." Vincent became silent. Emily placed the envelope on his desk. "You asked what I needed. I need to know who I am when my entire life is not organized around yours." The words hurt, but Vincent did not defend himself. "What will you do?" "I do not know yet." I could help. Emily almost smiled. That is the hardest part for you, is it not? Accepting that helping sometimes means doing nothing. Vincent looked toward the windows. 6 years earlier, Emily had walked into his office and told him someone should be comfortable disagreeing with him. Now she was asking him to prove that he had finally listened. If you leave this building, he said slowly, you lose access to the protection connected to your position. Emily's expression changed. Vincent immediately understood how the words sounded. The old Vincent would have continued. He would have explained the risks, increased the offer, and built a cage comfortable enough to resemble safety. Instead, he stopped. That came out wrong. Emily waited. Vincent took a breath. What I mean is that I am afraid something could happen to you again. I know. And I do not know how to stop being afraid without trying to control the situation. Emily looked at him with quiet surprise. It was the most honest sentence she had ever heard him speak. You do not have to stop being afraid, she said. You have to stop making other people pay for your fear. The room went silent. Vincent looked at the resignation letter. Then he picked it up, signed the acknowledgement page, and handed her a copy. You are free to leave. Emily took the paper. I was always free to leave. Vincent nodded. I know that now. She walked toward the door. Every instinct inside him demanded that he call her back. Offer more money, more authority, more security. Promise anything. Instead, he remained behind the desk. Emily stopped at the doorway and turned. Richard underestimated me because he thought I was invisible. Vincent looked at her. I underestimated you because I thought being needed meant you would stay. Emily's eyes softened. That is why I have to go. Vincent stood quietly as she entered the elevator. The doors began to close. Emily. She looked up. If staying costs you your freedom, then I have no right to ask. For several seconds, neither of them moved. Then Emily nodded. The elevator doors closed. Vincent returned to his office alone. Her chair was empty again. But this time there was no panic, no command, and no war to declare. He simply stood beside the desk and accepted the hardest truth power had ever taught him. Respect was not proven by how many people remained when you ordered them to stay. It was proven by whether you could open the door when someone needed to leave. 6 months later, Vincent Moretti entered the 42nd floor at 7:10 in the morning and looked toward the desk outside his office. The chair was empty. This time he smiled. Moretti Tower had changed since Emily left. Employees were encouraged to question decisions without risking their careers. Confidential systems required independent oversight. Daniel Brooks now attended every major security meeting, and Vincent listened when someone told him he was wrong. Richard Hale was facing legal consequences through the courts, while the evidence Emily preserved had exposed years of financial manipulation and abuse of private information. Vincent had lost contracts, money, and several relationships built on convenience rather than loyalty. He no longer considered those losses failures. At 9:30, the private elevator opened. Emily stepped onto the floor wearing a navy suit that reminded Vincent of the young woman who had arrived 6 years earlier with a secondhand briefcase and enough courage to tell him what everyone else was getting wrong. But she was not carrying his schedule now. She carried her own. Emily had spent the past 6 months building an independent foundation that helped employees and their families report workplace exploitation, access emergency assistance, and protect themselves when powerful employers misused private information. The foundation had begun with evidence from Richard's case and grown through partnerships Emily had chosen herself. Vincent had provided initial funding after she requested it. No conditions, no ownership, no seat on the board. Emily had made sure of that. You are early, Vincent said. You taught me that being early is the simplest form of respect. Vincent almost laughed. I believe you taught me that. Emily entered the conference room. 12 executives were waiting around the long table. 6 months earlier, some of them had barely looked at her when handing her documents. Now they stood as she entered. Emily stopped. Please sit down. They did. Vincent remained standing for 1 second longer. Emily looked at him. You too. He sat. The meeting lasted 90 minutes. Emily presented a workplace protection program that would require Moretti companies to submit to independent reviews, confidential employee reporting, and financial penalties for retaliation. Several executives objected. Vincent did not silence them. He listened. Then he looked at Emily. What do you recommend? 6 years earlier, he would have made the decision before asking the question. Emily explained the proposal. Vincent approved it. After the meeting, They returned to the quiet office where her empty chair still remained near the window. Vincent had never replaced it. You should hire a secretary, Emily said. I have interviewed 12 people. And, apparently, my standards are unreasonable. Emily smiled. That sounds familiar. Vincent looked at the chair. I thought loyalty meant staying. Emily waited. Then I thought losing you was the price of learning otherwise. And now, Vincent looked at her. Now I understand that people can leave a position without leaving your life. Emily's expression softened. There was no promise between them, no obligation, and no debt created by rescue or gratitude. There was only respect, freely given. Emily walked toward the elevator, then stopped. My father is hosting dinner Sunday. My sister asked whether you still refuse to eat dessert. Vincent looked surprised. Is that an invitation? It is a question. Then tell her I have reconsidered my position on dessert. Emily smiled and entered the elevator. Before the doors closed, Vincent spoke. Emily. She looked at him. Thank you for coming back. Emily held his gaze. I did not come back, Vincent. I came forward. The doors closed. Vincent stood alone beside the empty chair, but the silence no longer felt like loss. The woman he once called only his secretary had built a future that belonged entirely to her. And the man who once believed power could keep everyone close had finally learned to stand aside without disappearing. And that day, the most powerful man in Chicago understood that loyalty is not proven by staying. It is earned by giving someone the freedom to leave.